viewer question. The question was, should I be vulnerable with women I'm dating? So I guess the question is, what does it mean to be vulnerable? And then should we be vulnerable with women we're dating? What does it mean to you, vulnerability? Is it like opening your soul about your problems, your emotions when you're low?
I think.
Is it?
I think the main issue that becomes problematic is guys thinking that their girlfriend or their partner, whatever, is almost like a surrogate mother, and she's there to solve to solve every issue that they have. And I think that
carry the load.
Yeah, not in that way.
She's supposed to swallow the load, not carry the load.
Yeah, and I think that's where guys get into trouble because they make that mistake. And there's also a matter of timing on this as well, because I think you can get away with a little bit more the longer the relationship. I mean, not a lot more, but a little bit more maybe the longer the relationship's been going. But certainly if you are in the early stages of dating a girl or seeing a girl and you start crying about your childhood or your trauma or whatever, or even difficulties at work, stuff like that, she's likely to think you're a bit of a puss and get turned off. So, sorry, but to come back to the main issue, what is vulnerability? I think it is when you are
bearing your soul, potentially being locked, opening yourself up to.
I mean, let's be honest. It's essentially showing parts of yourself that are not necessarily going to look flattering. Particularly when we know that women are attracted to this kind of alpha god archetype, the strong man. You'd never see someone like James Bond, Daniel Craig, we always reference, being vulnerable in that way, right? It just doesn't happen if you're in any of the movies.
Well, that's a good point. Does he ever kind of tactically showcase a bit of his kind of inner trauma in a way that's through a look or through eye contact, and she can see this tactical vulnerability there from a position of strength? Because I think we've all had those moments, right? Terrible night out, come down of hell, and you want someone to whisper sweet nothings into your ear and cuddle you.
Yeah.
And women have come around I've been dating, and they've literally just been like horrified. They've been like, fuck this. But that's from a position of low frequency fear, shame, guilt, and being vulnerable in the feeling. Whereas actually, when I've been in a very high frequency social state and I'm kind of ruling the roost, I'm charismatic that night, I've said things to women where actually you could say, okay, he's been quite open and vulnerable there, but because I'm doing it from a position of strength, it's not weak, if that makes sense.
I think it's the expectation, though. Do you know what I mean? I think a lot of guys do it and they expect the girl to carry a little bit of the emotional load.
Are they doing it as a tactic to try and get sympathy? Because obviously I don't think any of us would think that was a good idea.
No, I don't.
Trying to get laid, we're not going to do that.
No, I don't think you should ever try and do it specifically as a tactic to try and get sympathy. I think that's a really, really bad idea. But then the question is, to what degree can you be honest about things that have happened to you in your life or things that are currently happening to you? I mean, one way I think you can do it that is effective and doesn't damage you too much is if you've overcome stuff. So if you could talk about, I had this bad stuff happening to me in my past or my childhood, or I went through, some difficulties with, substance abuse or things like this, but I've come through the other side, or whatever. I think, but then you've always got a hero's journey. And that can actually work quite well, but that's not quite being vulnerable in the way that we mean. I think being vulnerable is sort of what we're trying to get to. Really, is the classic wuss sort of crying on her shoulder every night. Oh my God, today at work was so tough. Come and hug me, honey. That is going to be bad. She might entertain it for a bit, but ultimately it's going to be bad because she's not going to see you as that strong, stable alpha guy who's going to be there to look after her and protect her.
No, I think at the end of the day, no woman will love you unconditionally, right? The only woman that will ever love you unconditionally is your mother.
Yeah, even she's not that keen, to be honest.
Yeah. To be fair.
We were having a laugh about it the other day because we were kind of swapping stories about, we were actually talking about this on text message, weren't we? About the nonsense wishy-washy Cosmopolitan magazine idea of, just be vulnerable with a woman, right? Women trying to give men dating advice. And we were having a laugh previously when we've done that. Women are just ruthless. They're just like I've been literally had women just almost laugh in my face and walk out the door trying to be vulnerable because I'm presenting most of the time as kind of a relatively strong alpha dude, right? A leader, and then suddenly I'm curled up in a ball, and she's just like, she's horrified because that's not her expectation of how you present yourself. And also the women I've tended to date have been quite feminine and submissive.
I think this is what we were talking about as well.
Polarizing masculine guy. Yeah. I mean, what was the story you said when you kind of opened up and the girl almost had a go? She turned it around and started having a go at you.
Yeah.
Almost like she plunged the knife deep in, didn't she?
So yeah, not like quite a long time ago, I opened up and I was having a really rough time.
Not your current missus, long before that, yeah. And I was just, you know, when you're really not in a good place, and I was like, look, I wasn't even expecting anything. I was just like, look, I'm really not feeling good right now. It's just fucking tore into me. She smelled blood in the water. She smelled weakness in the water.
Smelled weakness, and this is what we were talking about.
They've got a dog scent for weakness, don't they? And it's in one of Chateau Artist's rules. The 16 rules is never. He was actually talking about never abiding by a woman's rules, because she'll recede you. She'll resent you worse than a rapist if you start bowing to her boundaries and bowing to her rules. But then it was carried on from that, as he said, look, they have a dog scent for weakness, because again, it's an evolutionary thing. If they sense emotional weakness, they're going to take advantage of that, and they're going to try and push it. And if you're weak, they're just going to walk on you.
So what in that specific situation though? I mean, what did she say? I mean, what was her sort of like? How did she come back at you? What was her complaint?
It wasn't necessarily what she said, but it was just like she smelled weakness, right? So she just took advantage of that. Just constantly going, just attacking.
And it's kind of an extended version of what we always talk about, which guys are losing the frame, because evolutionary-wise, women will bed down with you, and then death by 1,000 cuts. If you let little things erode your way like the sea erodes a cliff, then you're suddenly in a really bad position.
But to play devil's advocate a bit, though, do you think you can build up a certain amount of credit in the bank? So over a certain period of time, because like I told you about that situation, like say last year with my girlfriend, and I was having a pretty rough time. Like actually generally pretty rough time. And in the end, something, we had a bit of an argument about something, and I just said to her, look, I'm not feeling good. This is the reason.
Right.
And to be fair to her, to give her credit, she was actually kind of supportive, and she didn't rip into me. It wasn't a huge problem. But this is obviously a girl I've known for a long time, and I've built up quite a lot of credit. If it had been in the first 2 weeks, would it have worked as well?
It's interesting, because what was the reason you told her? Was it to try and gain some sort of support?
No, not at all. Well,
or was she just kept asking you about
No, she kept... I was basically suffering physically as well as mentally quite badly at the time, and for various reasons, not necessarily to go into, but I wasn't in a good place.
Right.
And she was just going on me about something else, and I in the end I was like, look, look, listen, I'm not in a good place right now. These are the reasons. This is what it is. And she kind of got it, and she actually, to her credit, she actually pull back, and she was quite supportive. But I don't want to go against the general theme of this video, but is it because I built up a certain amount of credit with her that maybe I was able to sort of get away with that, whereas just the average guy in the street doing it with a girl that he's known for 2 months, it's not going to play very well at all.
Well, even the way you're saying it, like you got away with it, implies that you think it's still weak to do it, right? So, which I agree with. I think the problem is I just can't see it. It's almost like, in my experience dating, they almost store all this stuff in their brain. And
they might do.
At random times.
They might do. And I'm not even saying no.
It may not happen with her, but I've had it before where they almost bring stuff up from years ago that I've done wrong, or I've kind of omitted to, and then
I mean, look, that example aside, in general, it's just a very bad idea, because again, what do we try to, what's the Hearties thing about, you're meant to be the oak tree, you're meant to be the strong, solid, invincible force, right? And she's like the energy, she's like the wind, she's this ethereal thing. And so if you start admitting weakness, then naturally, by necessity, that's going to make you less attractive to her, because, well, you're not...
Well, it goes against masculine, feminine energy.
Exactly. But I suppose just to bring another point into this, it's also not really appropriate. Like, and to be fair, I have quite a good network of people that I can talk to, including you guys, and you both helped me out on various occasions and things. So thanks for that. But also other people as well that I know, other male friends I can talk to, I can go to with this stuff, and I can have those conversations with them. And generally speaking, that's what I'm going to do. I'm not generally going to go to my girlfriend or to whoever I'm with and speak to her about it. If anything, I'm going to try to keep a sort of a stoic sort of surface with her. And then it's actually with the guy friends, ironically, you could be a bit more vulnerable,
of course,
because they're not judging you. It's the relationship is different.
You need some vulnerability out there. What we're not saying is you can't just
bottle everything up.
No, you obviously don't. With men, we should be more vulnerable, because we kind of understand what we're going through.
Which is kind of ironic, isn't it? In a way. I mean, it depends on the nature of your friendships, I suppose. I mean, if you're down if it's a load of blokes down the rugby club and stuff, maybe it's not going to be. You need certain types of.
They're trying to trying to be vulnerable and then like kind of piss on your head, literally, from behind. Like, oh, look at this wanker.
Yeah. So you need certain types of friends, but I think actually, and actually, one of the problems with I think a number of the clients that we get is they don't really have any male friends.
They don't, man. There's a very common thread there, isn't there? They don't really have any male friends. It's just like, fuck. Who are they confiding to? Only the women they're dating, and that's not good.
And if you think about something like, I mean, there's a client of ours who obviously I'm not going to name, but
Mr. M. Joe.
There's a client of ours who it seems like possibly doesn't have many male friends, and he's also quite vulnerable with the women that he's dealing with, and it's not a good combination.
Yes.
I think this is why actually it was said early on in the game days. Like, I don't know if this was a mystery thing or if it was just, but I remember back in the the earlier 2000s it being talked about. Have a good group of male friends that you can confide in, and I do think it's actually a really, really important thing.
Where does this mainstream advice come from? Because we've both all read a book in common. We're not going to mention the name, but he's actually he's a fucking intelligent guy that we all respect. What is the premise of him saying the strength in vulnerability with this whole process?
I don't know.
What's he actually saying?
It's complicated. I don't know what one would actually try and achieve by being vulnerable to a woman.
Does he mean be authentic, like own your flaws and reveal all, or does he mean something else?
I think more so like that. But then again, you said you've seen interviews of him with his girlfriend, and he's extremely open. He's extremely
it's almost like they're kind of mates, and you're losing a bit of that sexual polarity there.
That's the thing, and this is what we were speaking about. When I was having that conversation with you on WhatsApp the other day, where we were talking about vulnerability and who you can actually be vulnerable with. Your guy friends or a psychologist, not the feminine girl, because she can turn from this cute little feminine girl into a fucking monster if she smells weakness, right?
Yeah.
So I don't actually know what one would. I don't know what one would try and achieve by being vulnerable with a woman. Do you know what I mean? Because first,
a woman you're dating,
because she's not going to. She doesn't want to actually carry your problems.
No, and she's got enough of her own. She's got enough of her own problems. She's constantly good carrying, and you're trying to carry that weight.
Yeah, she can't fix them, and plus, it sort of it goes completely against the nature of what a male-female dynamic should be in a relationship, right? You being the strong, dominant leader, obviously she's supporting you in her feminine way, right? So
there was that clip as well from I always send it around.
You love that clip, don't you?
The Joe Rogan clip where the female fighter is just like, my UFC fighter was getting beat the shit out of, and I looked at him and he was just like this on the ground. I was just thinking, what a fucking pussy, and I was all attraction for him. And they broke up very soon afterwards.
This is a UFC fighter, which is absolutely nuts, right?
But it's just like they want you to be dying, to the last breath. That kind of Theodore Roosevelt speech about being in the arena, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's a pretty extreme example. It's a pretty like, as a guy, you hear that and you're like, Jesus Christ, But I mean, potentially I don't know anything about it. Maybe she was. It seems kind of on the extreme end of the spectrum, but it does show the degree to which female nature can go. And I don't think a lot of guys. And I think the reason that there's this mainstream idea that vulnerability is a good idea is because there's this meme that's been talked about since the 70s and the 80s, which is open up and show your feminine side and all of that. I remember that being talked about even when I was in school. I mean, it's been around for a long time. Yeah. We were encouraged to, and I think the thinking behind it is sort of this slightly naive. Well, women are open. Women are very emotion based and sort of open, and they can talk about that stuff. So why should men? And then because there's this people don't understand the fact that there needs to be polarity. So they think, well, if I'm more like a woman myself and I open up and I'm emotional, surely that's going to make me more attracted to her. Whereas actually, what we're saying is we flip it on its head, and it's like, no, the more different to her you are, the more attractive you are.
I think it's a general movement of the way society is going. And Zan Perion had a really interesting quote where he said, "We want equality, but all we're achieving is sameness." Yeah, and it goes against what you're saying as well, right? You need that masculine feminine polarity, but in modern society, I mean, we've all experienced it where there isn't that dynamic in relationships, whether it's been within the family or whether it's been with friends, and it's just a fucking disaster, right? The woman doesn't respect the man, the man doesn't respect the woman, they fight all the time, and I think it's because of that reason, right?
I mean, I've got it with my parents. I mean, it's just my dad has no idea of games, so he's got no frame. He's an alpha guy technically in his work and was for a long time, but no idea how to deal with my mum. And she's constantly nagging him away, and I'm just like, God, it's just levels of disrespect that I just would not tolerate, you know? And it's slightly off tangent, but I guess it's all about having awareness of kind of what you're going to stand for. And I think by being vulnerable with a guy you're dating, you're opening yourself up to a world of trouble there. I just think, why not talk to your mates about it who aren't going to judge you and just play the James Bond stoic figure? How can that backfire? It can't. Whereas if you tell a load of shit, it can definitely backfire. She can definitely use it against you.
Well, I think the point that you're getting here is that there's only downside, really.
There's no upside.
There's no upside.
There's absolutely no upside.
You know,
maybe you could be tactically vulnerable. So again, myself and Troy are always looking for new ways to be dark tried and manipulate people. Think is a way of being tactically vulnerable, where it's almost like you're kind of like in that oxytocin moment of just banging and be like, oh, I haven't felt like this in a while. You really get me somehow, and then always change the subject. And there's a bit of almost
like extreme emotional push-pull,
thin layer of like almost like the Japanese chefs, with a bit of poison on the skin of the fugu, the puffish. You're always kind of dangling a bit of tactical vulnerability there, which might be
for sure. But I think that's like quite an advanced level of vulnerability, whereas most guys are just, coming back from home and they're like, I've had a tough day at work, and they want
sympathy. They want a surrogate mother, and also they don't have an outlet because they don't really have male friends, they just don't fully understand that women want to be the childlike feminine, and they want the guy to be a fucking masculine, Don Draper style James Bond character. He's not fucking shedding his problems and needing a fucking shoulder scarf.
But this is the thing, man. Before I got into game and before I started studying, male-female dynamics, I thought it was like that.
Well, we're brought up to think
I thought it was like that.
That's the way.
You go out with your girlfriend, you have a tough day, and you sit it down. You're like, it's been a fucking tough day. And if I think about it, that's probably the idea of what that masculine should be. And then 100%. She eventually just, again, it's the whole butt plug later where he said, death by 1,000. Death by 1,000 cuts, right? She just gradually loses respect for you.
Yeah.
Until you just
there's nothing left, is there?
There's nothing left. You're just a fucking dry corpse in the corner with no respect for yourself, and she doesn't have any respect for you either, right? It's just not a good situation.
It's a very good point.
It's just not a good situation. Sorry, man,
yeah.
You were gonna say
I was going to say, and probably this is only getting worse. I mean, I was talking to a Gen Z. I was talking to a Gen Z woman the other day, and she was saying my generation is a disaster, and it was
Gen Z is
well, that means like born in, I don't know, we're talking in the early 20s. Somebody in their early 20s, right? Yeah. So, and she was saying my generation is a disaster, and it was because there's almost like the guys think that they should be exactly like the woman. And she said she went on a date with this guy, and he was like, no, we're exactly the same. We're all exactly the same, like that. She said I completely just friend zoned him because I was totally turned off by that. Yeah. And so even we're sitting in a Latin American country now, which theoretically, is a little bit more traditional than the West and everything, but even in a country like this, that sort of mindset is creeping in. Which on the one hand, and it's this weird thing that Zamparion quote you just referred to. We wanted, what was it, equality?
We want equality, but all
we're getting sameness, and it's a real like. And I've talked to a few women about this recently. It's a real weird double-edged sword for them because on the one hand, women, I think, wanted obviously equality, which is fair enough, and they wanted, they pushed for feminism, but it's now put them in this position where the dudes have gone along with it and they're not attracted to the guys, because the way the guys are now behaving, based on the tenets of feminism, is making them actively unattractive to women.
Well, I mean, you always refer back to that book. I mean, 50 Shades of Grey was one of the best sellers, and if you think about the dynamic in that book, extremely alpha individual, dominates a female, religiously over and over again, doesn't show any vulnerability, and it just gets every single woman off who reads that.
Doesn't he turn into a puss at the end though, and they end up together?
I don't know, but we'll forget that part.
Well, actually,
the point of the video,
that is the plot line, which is every woman's fantasy, which is tame the bad boy. And there's a book called Dangerous Men and Adventurous Women, and
what book is
Dangerous Men and Adventurous Women, and it talks about the storyline of every female romance novel being dangerous bad boy, and she manages to tame him at the end.
Yes,
and that's
but to what degree though?
Well, I'm not convinced I think they tame the guy and then just get bored of him and fuck the pool boy. I mean, I think once you're tame, they just don't care, right? You've got to stay as this kind of dark dry knob. I mean, really, tactical dark dry.
I don't know if it was you who said this, but she doesn't have to. There has to be an element of, fuck, that guy annoys me sometimes.
Yes.
But she actually respects you.
I mean, the most attractive my ex ever was to me was when she found out I cheated on her, and she said, I was so angry, I punched a hole in the wall in the office, but the sex was the best it's ever been. And as soon as I started turning nice, she fucked off. So You know, I think some women are
Right,
more
but these
chaotic.
are like extreme examples, right?
That's what I say about the UFC fighting.
Are they all?
Well, I think all women are slightly bipolar and just like what they
No,
can't
of course
have.
they are, right?
I think they like being talked down to, treated badly, treat them mean, keep them keen. I mean, it's just whenever I suddenly start getting nice with girls I'm dating, they just fuck off. They really do, unfortunately. It's just how the cookie crumbles.
All right. So how would one manage that type of dynamic with a girl?
I think you've always got to be willing to walk away. I think we know in our soul when we're getting too close to the girl, and I think you've somehow got to pull back and always maintain that golden rule of almost 65, 70% she's into you, 30%, 35% you're into her, and you really care about her, but you don't tolerate disrespect, and you've always got to be willing to walk away. And the way to kind of propagate that is always be out talking to women, spinning plates, and, you know, even if you're not going to cheat, be an ethical fisherman. Because women want to be with a guy who can fuck other women and doesn't. And the problem with most men is they get
bored.
They lose their match fitness. They just sack all their eggs into one basket. That's their only outlet for sex. She controls your outlet for sex. You're not cheating. I know you're living with her. I mean, the hardest game is played in a relationship when you're living with a woman.
I've seen it countless times where guys, you know, he's going to the gym, he's smashing it, he's dressing well, he's confident, gets into a relationship for a few years, starts putting on weight.
Yeah.
The girl starts putting on weight as well. She starts losing respect for him, and then eventually she just leaves, right?
Yeah.
It's just
it's pretty much how every relationship plays out. I mean, what's the divorce stat? Instigated 70% by women.
75%, I think.
By women. It's instigated by women 75% of the time.
So this is actually a good point, though, right? Because this is mainstream advice. Be vulnerable, and that's the result.
There's a great book,
basically,
guys. I can point them to by a guy called F.J. Shark. It's a bit of an underground classic called How to Be the Jerk Women Love. The premise of the book is not being a total arsehole. It's essentially just putting yourself first. And realizing women want you to put yourself first, and they want to be the kind of sidekick alongside as the hero does his journey. Yeah. And as soon as you start making her an equal partner, or involving her too much, or whatever, but basically becoming a bit soft and lovey-dovey, you're fucked. You are fucked.
Well, it's that interesting concept.
Bond does it, doesn't he? And the bird fucks him off.
Who, Bond?
The girl that dies in the cage under the water, who starts getting all soft, and she's like, this fucking puss. And she doesn't want anything to do with him, even in those movies, right? He's the ultimate alpha dude. Even there, she's like, fuck this clown.
Yeah. Yes, but the way that he reacts, though, is pretty cool. When he's just like, on the boat, and he says to Anne, the bitch is dead. I think he's the classic line.
Well, he's trying to show off to some old hag, but
he's stoical about it. Though is the point. So there is also an element of how you react if that situation does happen is another part of the puzzle. Which
does old Doc, you've watched a lot of Mad Men. I mean, he's a kind of classic alpha dude. Does he ever going to get soft and fuck up?
I'm just trying to think here, really. I don't think he really. He doesn't get soft, but he certainly gets. I don't want to say fucked over. I mean, he say, for example, he cheats on his first wife religiously throughout the thing, and he's not really soft, but he does have a couple of kids with her, and he obviously does love her, but he does stuff behind her back, and then she knows, and then she does actually cheat on him, and she does end up leaving him for another dude. So in a way, the worst thing that can happen to a guy happens to him. You know, your wife fucks you off for some other guy. But the way that he handles it is the most impressive thing, which is that he's non-reactive. He just carries on with his stuff anyway. Just okay, fine, whatever.
Compartmentalize.
Just like, yeah, all right, fine. And then he moves into an apartment in New York City and just gets on with his life. You know, he's not sitting there. Well, it's not shown in the series if he is, but he's not lying there crying, looking at the ceiling, and thinking about what might have been. I think there's so. He doesn't really get soft. No, I don't think in that show. I'm just trying to think of any examples. He has a female friend that he's friends with throughout the whole thing, and there's the main moment of vulnerability happens right at the end of the whole thing, when he sort of says to her, he realises some of the shitty things that he's done in his life. He sort of confides those to her, but that doesn't really matter because she's a friend. She's not a romantic interest. So I would say no. But like I said, I think the best lesson to be taken from that show is the way that he reacts when negative things happen, which is he's incredibly stoic.
Yeah. I mean, a good way, Les, I think, is this idea of it always ends bad, and almost having that as a frame in your head, which takes the pressure off. Because look, even if you meet the love of your life and get married, either you die.
It's very pessimistic.
No, but it's actually a very freeing mentality. It's not at all. It's a positive flip on mortality. It's almost a memento mori version for dating, which is, even if it's the love of your life, eventually you're going to die first, or she's going to die first, or you're going to cheat on her, and she's going to cheat on you, or you'll get divorced. it always ends bad. It can't
Death or
not,
tears.
because death is the ultimate end result. So therefore, it's actually quite freeing if you flip it on that lens. Like it's always ends bad. Actually, it gives you a certain freedom. And when I've actually remembered to apply that mindset, I'm very chilled when I'm with a woman, and I don't get needy at all, because I'm like, well, it's always going to end bad on some timeline. It's all good. Let me just enjoy it for what the fuck it is right now.
It's like memento mori, but applied to relationships.
Exactly. Like, because you can't grip onto something for eternity. Like, that's just not how it goes, right? Life is just a fleeting set of sensory experiences, and we die. The events themselves have no meaning. It's the perception we give and we have to the events that give it meaning.
Yeah.
So, one guy can be cheated on by a woman and be like, oh, my life is over for the next 10 years.
And the other guy can be like, I'm catching a one-way fucking ticket.
Yeah, well, he's just like, thank fuck, I didn't have the balls to dump her. Right now I can just go charge around the world, fuck a load of women. Like, it's just totally your perception framing. Right?
So, yeah, what were we going to say?
So, again, exactly, that's the Don Draper thing.
Yeah.
So he might get cheated on, some bird may leave him. I mean, his second wife...
And it's all about mindset. So the client we have in common, again, the opposite of that, mopes around after some middle-aged boiler bins him off. And it's like, fucking hell, if you realise your own value, you'd be cut up to your nuts and guts, but he just doesn't have any idea, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, he gets married. His second wife is even more attractive. Like really beautiful Latin American woman, actually, like American, and they're married for some time and whatever. And then in the end, he's cheating on her consistently, blah blah blah, whatever, and she ends up basically dumping him, and because it's just not working for her anymore. And again, I think I'm not saying these things don't affect him, because I think they do, and there is a sort of redemption thing right at the end of it where he kind of realizes, and he almost the last episode is almost kind of spiritual in a way, because he's like, fuck, I need to sort my life out, and he kind of realizes that some of the consequences of his actions. But what he doesn't do is
mope around,
like,
which I've done many times.
Which we become that kind of.
If I look back at some of my behaviour and through the lens of, was that emotionally resilient and unfuckwithable, or was it emotionally incredibly weak? I mean, it's a learning process, right? You learn.
Yes.
But I think a good test of a man's emotional unfuckwithability is, when the chips are down, when shit is going wrong, how does he react? Not just with women, but in life. And really, that's what that Joe Dispenza video I'll send you if I haven't already. Act as if nothing bothered you. It's basically like, it's a really good kind of walkthrough about how to be unfuckwithable, and actually just remember, like, acting as if nothing bothers you means nothing bothers you, right? And it's actually just a conscious decision, because it doesn't mean shit. It's like we give random events gravitas because of our meaning we must give things in life, because humans need meaning in stories.
Yeah.
But there's no reason you can't just minimize. As Eckhart Tolle says, it's not a problem, it's a life situation. A problem is you're about to die. Everything else is just mind fluff, because the brain is always looking for threats and negatives.
It's a tricky one, isn't it? Because on the one hand, I agree, and when you think about it, like, this is just some random woman that you just happen to meet one night in a bar, or you happen to meet one day on Tinder, and you've been in a relationship with her, and then you guys split up. And if it hadn't been her,
and she happened to let you snuggle with her.
Yeah,
we're all obsessed with the snuggles.
And if it
basically, that's all it is. She's let you curl up on her sweet nipple and like stroke your hair a few times, and then you're like, oh my god, I must have her forever. It's like, fucking hell.
But it could have been her.
It's true. How soft are we?
But it could have been her. It could have been her, but it could have been.
Could have been any old thing. It could have been a Mr. M's finest. It's just a bowling ball of a, cotton soup. I mean,
it could have been her, or it could have been anybody of any billions and billions of people. However, the reality is, it was her.
Yes.
You did develop something.
Yes.
And so, can we completely divorce from that? And I don't know.
Do we trick ourselves into it though? Because women seem to be able to just be like, right, he's weak now, I'm done, I'm going to fuck his friend. Whereas we're still cuddling the pillow, going, whoa, where is she gone? Like, why are we the hopeless romantics though? Why are we? Women are just ruthless. Like, they'll just turn on you in a heartbeat and be like, no, I've had his friend now. I'm going to fuck his friend.
That's the biological thing, though, isn't it? The necessity for moving on and making,
the war brides analogy, right?
Yeah, exactly. But
can you imagine?
Even then, I'm not sure even that stereotype. I'm not sure is entirely true, because I've had girls hit me up years later going like, oh, I remember, So I think they could be a bit more nostalgic than we think. But
can you imagine back in the day though, like literally a rival tribe comes in, you've had your legs cut off, you're lying there dying, and you see your missus just happily going into a tent with the new war chief, actually with a smile on her face. Can you imagine
it must have been
the horrendous nature of the beast? I mean, it's just.
Well, like what's the quote? Life is nasty, brutish, and short. And on that note,
and the other one, all is fair in love and war. We must remember that. And again, when I've kind of been through tough times, I always say that out loud. And it's a bit like, for me, that acts as if nothing bothers you. Routine of like, you know what? It's all a bit of a game. It's just a sensory set of experiences. we're all fucked. Like, doesn't really matter. But it does help minimize it, because I think about the amount of time I've wasted stressing over stuff that now, in hindsight, what the fuck was the point in that? I survived it all. Why didn't I just go with the lens of, actually, I'm all fatty, it's all good. The bad, the good, the negative. Just enjoy it for what it is. You know, there's a certain beauty to that if you can cultivate that, you know. It's easier said than done. But
on that note, what should a guy do if he shouldn't be vulnerable with the girl that he's dating to maintain that masculine feminine polarity and have a good happy ending? Good ending where he just kicks the bucket.
I think for me, what's helped is this image of this amused mastery or amused dominance, where you are this kind of almost Poseidon-like adult, godlike masculine, and always remembering she actually wants to be that childlike feminine. She is a little girl making noise, essentially, the 8-year-old niece, right? And it's annoying the heat of the moment.
Okay, so treating her as a child, always never being emotionally perturbed by anything that she does, right? That should be the
default frame.
That should be the goal.
Not really taking her seriously, you know, not in a condescending way, but in a loving way. A bit like you had an 8-year-old niece giving you shit. Are you going to take her seriously? No.
I'm going to play devil's advocate here.
Right.
If you are with a girl, right? We all know that when you're operating from that high vibrational state, she can act badly, and it's like water off a duck's back. You know, you can deal with it. You put her in her place. You know, a few minutes later, you're back, and everything's good. When you are in a dark place and your emotional vibration is down, you're feeling shit, how would you deal with those situations? Because I think a lot of guys, that's probably where a lot of shit hits the fan.
That's where they fuck up. I think if you can remove yourself from the situation, go and talk to a friend, or even get on the phone, go for a walk, do some exercise, change your state, as Tony Robbins said, right? Life is too short to suffer. So you catch yourself in that low frequency state, get the fuck out of the vicinity, don't get in an argument with her because they can smell blood in the water.
I agree.
Go and hit some weights, go and do some boxing, go and talk to a friend, and suddenly you're in a completely different situation.
I mean, once again, I would reiterate the importance of having a good circle of male friends, or I mean, even a couple of female friends there as well. But certainly a good circle of strong male friends that you can talk to about this shit and other shit, so you don't have to take it to her.
I mean, the other thing is as well, which is probably relevant to me if I ever date someone long term again, is it sounds controversial. I will never have a sole living arrangement with the woman I'm dating, even if I have kids with her, or have a place I can go, and I probably won't live with her 24/7 because I think when you're caged together, it makes things incredibly hard. To have that any separation, right? Because it's like...
So basically create distance.
I think you have to. I mean, the marriage model or the traditional kind of model is you move in together, but we all know that, you know, humans crave novelty, excitement and adventure. And the reality is when you're around someone 24/7, I mean, how the fuck do you maintain that?
Who was that president who said to maintain a successful relationship, you've got to...
Winston Churchill.
What did he say? You got to leave...
Never see your wife after 10 p.m. and never see her before 1 p.m. the next day. And they lived on separate wings of 10 Downing Street and actually had a long and successful marriage. And they kept that rule, which is you don't need to be around someone 24/7. In fact, I challenge anyone to be around even their perceived soulmate and not resent them in the end. Because familiarity breeds contempt, right?
Yeah, 100%. So...
And again, women don't, this is where the relationship management comes in, because women's nesting instincts will be like, let me spend all my time together with him.
And then she'll lose respect for you,
lose
attraction.
Because you're around the whole time, and it's just like, there's no...
So basically, just summing this all up, treat her like a child, never take anything she says too seriously, create separation.
But from a loving way, not a condescending way.
Of course,
understanding the dynamic between the masculine and the feminine.
I guess we gotta define that. I guess it's understanding that dynamic and just understanding your role in the relationship as well, being the dominant leader, her not taking it too seriously, looking after her and letting her step into that feminine role rather than being like a mate, right?
You have to maintain some sort of tension, and there's a great quote from 6 Years of Challenge, those books. Life challenges men, women are the bystanders. The reason my brother, who has no understanding about game and has been with the same woman since he's 14, he's 36 now, the reason he's able to, from the outside at least, maintain a very strong relationship is he's constantly challenging himself to level up, and she witnesses that. And when I think about my own life, and I've just been sat on the couch with the Cheetos, getting a bit fat in COVID, you know what, I got way more shit. Because I was just not leveling up, right? So we shouldn't, we've got to level up for the sake of being on the hero's journey ourselves. Women shouldn't be having to push us to do that.
Leveling up. The woman should not be your main priority. You need to have...
No, absolutely.
You need to have a mission in life. You need to have something else that is ultimately more important. Not that you don't love her deeply or whatever, but it's like that you have to be on a mission and you have to be on that journey, and she is there to come along or not, and that's up to her. But you've got to have something more important going on.
And it's a great thing to bring up, because we've all done that thing of not really being fulfilled on personal lives and getting into this, just chasing women relentlessly, thinking that's going to solve our problem. Yeah. We've all been through that to realise it doesn't do shit. So we ironically transitioned to teaching it, but even that is a transition to actually having a mission outside of the dating life, right?
Yeah.
So it's fascinating. But if you look at all men who have unlimited pick of women, they've picked a mission, they picked a passion, and they level up in that game. They pick that game, right? They've lent their all against the correct ladder. They've got to the top of that game, and you get unlimited women as a result of them seeing you conquering the game, because you're not making women the priority, right? The rockstar effect, the footballer effect.
No, 100%. I think, you did an interview with him, actually, Sterling Cooper, the ex-porn star.
Sure.
And in his sex course, one of the pivotal principles was, he says, put yourself first when you're pleasuring a girl, and naturally
the selfish bastard routine.
Exactly right.
Well,
and naturally she's going to have an amazing time as well. And I think that, in my opinion, it's almost like sort of the methodology that one should apply to life.
And that's the premise of this How to Be the Jerk Women Love book. Put yourself first.
Yeah.
And women want to be the sidekick along for the journey of a successful man's life. They don't want to be the full pie. They want to be cream on top, right?
They want their pie creamed in.
Yes.
But, I mean, I have a slightly controversial view on this topic of sex, because a lot of guys, and a lot of guys understandably are very, very concerned about how good in bed they are and how pleasured the woman has been and everything like that. And a lot of guys we've worked with recently, they think, well, she had a great time with me sexually. She orgasmed so many, a number of times. And I was the best she ever had, so therefore she's going to love me forever. I actually don't think that's necessarily true. I mean, yeah, of course a girl likes a good time in bed, like anybody, right? But actually, and again, this is going to be controversial, but I think being a little bit selfish is actually the way to go.
100%.
Almost to the point of not being very good, because, and I've told this story a number of times recently, but one of the women in my life who was the most into me and the most obsessed with me, the sex was average to mediocre to not very to pretty terrible. To
well, you didn't want to pork her,
because I wasn't. It was one of those weird situations where I was kind of with her for the snuggles in a way, and I did like her, and she was a very attractive girl, but she was and this is where my weird psychology comes in, because she was too all over me too quickly. I kind of lost the attraction to some extent.
That's normal, though. I get that.
Yeah, so I wasn't really I wasn't that bothered about the sex after a while, but she was really into me and she kept pulling me in. So I'm like, okay, fine, I'll come around. I'll have the cuddles. You can cook for me, whatever.
And as a reward, I'll give you the bang.
And
if you
and then we'll just go to sleep, and I won't,
She's desperately clawing at you for the porking.
And she was one of the women most obsessed with me in my entire life. Whereas when you're like, oh my god, I'm gonna work really hard and I'm gonna study how to do cunnilingus perfectly, so that she'll, it's just like she's like, yeah, you're trying too hard, man. Do you know what I mean?
The person less invested always has the power.
Yeah,
right?
and that includes, ironically, in the bedroom, where every guy out there thinks, oh, I've got to be this Superman lover, otherwise she's going to... I mean, yeah, obviously, if you're good in bed, you're good in bed. Yeah, that's going to... of course, for a period of time, that's going to keep a girl coming back if you're really good in bed. But if you're really good in bed and you're also a bit of a puss, in the end, she might just bugger off with somebody who's less good in bed. Women want... Psychology's really strange.
Women want narcissistic, selfish men that put themselves first. Yeah. That's the reality.
And so in a bedroom scenario, without getting too much into the details, I mean, I would not be overly... I mean, yeah, obviously, you want to give it your best shot and everything, but I would be more concerned with one's own pleasure rather than wondering...
Absolutely
or even particularly asking her, oh, did you have a good time? Oh,
and when I think back to when girls have said, no, I'm not... They break up with their boyfriend, they get back in touch, and maybe I see them, maybe I don't. And I'm like, why did you come back and see me? And she goes, oh, because you were good in bed. And actually, it's the times I've been most selfish. I don't give a fuck about her pleasure. Banging her, spunking on the face, kicking her out, and she's like, oh, mate, you're so good in bed. I'm like, doing the opposite of the mainstream dating advice,
Exactly.
All this bollocks about go down on the girl. It's like, no, fucking don't go down on the girl on the first date. All stuff.
So, and as Les rightly says, I mean, it's almost a metaphor for
life.
For life in
Expand
itself.
It
out. The more. I think a lot of guys, I've said this before, like on tweets and things. A lot of guys need to be actually more selfish.
It's linked to evolution as well, because narcissistic men would gather resources and win. Yeah. That's why.
And when I say selfish, I mean, obviously you've got to be good to your brothers and everything.
You've got a tribe, though. It's a different type of. It's like you can win as a tribe. You don't need to be a complete lone wolf.
But it's almost like in life. Think, all right. So what do I want?
Yeah.
And how do I get that thing?
That's
and then be focused on that rather than being, I'm going to be this super altruistic nice guy to everybody.
100% agree.
Anyway, on that note,
We've gone on many tangents. It's been entertaining. If you resonate with any of what we're saying or you don't, doesn't matter. Get in touch, any questions, or come and join us in Colombia, the city of sin, or somewhere around Europe. We're going to be in Europe over the next few months. Barcelona, Warsaw, potentially Russia, Ukraine. Myself, Troy and Les, the dastardly, the three musketeers. info@jamestusk.com, include your WhatsApp number, email, or troy@realtroyfrancis.com. We'll see you in the next video.
Bye-bye.
Book a call on the link below so we can help you map out exactly what you want in your dating life, the strategy, the vision, and we can help you get from A to B as quickly as possible, depending on what you want. That's the key thing. We've been doing this for 10 years. We've worked with thousands of dudes. We can save you your most valuable assets, which are your time, your attention, and your money, and get you from A to B as fast as possible. So book a free call, a free dating strategy consultation with us below.